Hi, it's Thomas from Purpose Driven Tribe here again, and today I have another amazing guest. This guest is a real professional. She's been serving to other people for over 25 years. She's a specialist in Posttraumatic Stress Disorder, and she's a psychotherapist looking for answers and ways to help others navigate through the often difficult terrain of healing trauma and attachment wounds. She's also author of a book which is called Attachment Focused Yoga and Meditation for Trauma, and co-author of another book called Attachment Disturbance in Adults, Treatment for Comprehensive Repair. So you already can see that this is a real expert who's got a lot of absolutely great stuff to share. And let me welcome here Deirdre Fay. Hi, Deirdre.
Hello, Thomas. Well done with my name. I know it's a little tricky.
So it is indeed, but we already said that we can call you just D. So sometimes I'll just call you D.
Perfect.
And please, can you give us some overview? What have you been doing all that 25 years, and what your own purpose-driven journey looks like?
Glad to do that. Everything I do actually comes out of my own healing. I don't, way 25, 30 years ago, I had my own trauma history come up I didn't even know that I had, and it spurred me on to want to help other people. It was, I didn't know what I was doing in that time. There wasn't that much about the whole field of trauma, and I at that time was living in a yoga ashram, which is like a monastery where you do yoga all the time.
Wow.
So I was living a very, how do you want to call it, a very regulated life of yoga and meditation. And I just saw that before I was able to be in my body in a way that worked beautifully, but yet when my trauma history came up, I couldn't do the same things. I was scared. I was afraid. I was before training for triathlons, on the bike all the time, running, swimming, and then it was hard after my trauma history came up. So it was like, why was it so easy before and so hard now? And that set me on my path of exploring this. And then I realized there's so many people who were in my situation who had a difficult time being in their body. So I went to school, I got a degree, I started working with the big experts in the field at the time. And I started developing my own stuff because nobody was doing at that time what I was doing. So that was really the way I went. I have another book called the Becoming Safely Embodied Skills, which really were the simple skills that people could learn, the mechanics of mindfulness and how to be in their body. And then I got invitations to write these other books and to teach. I've taught around the world. I've been very lucky in that way.
Okay. Wow, that's a lot of very interesting stuff. So just let me put it into some wider perspective. So you personally experienced trauma, and this thing inspired you to just become an expert in trauma and helping other people to overcome any kind of trauma, basically. And what I think is really interesting, you have found that there is really very strong connection between the post-traumatic experience and the kind of life which is connected to purpose-driven life. In other words, if you have found out that if your patients, your clients find purpose in their life, they can overcome, from what I understand, some very difficult, heavy post-traumatic stress disorders. So could you tell us more about this?
Right. Well, you know what, I think it's not just about trauma, it's about our own stuck places. So if somebody wants to do something and they find they can't, well, what is going on inside of them? I think of it as an internal platform. So I have a client who wanted to write a book. For a year, she said she wanted to write a book. And yet she was afraid. So then we had to look at what were the fears, and to break it down, instead of listening to the fear like I can't, I'm not good enough, nobody wants to listen to me, to use that as sort of fuel and motivation, so that what does she want? What she wanted was to write a book. She wanted to be out there. So instead of looking at what she didn't want, we looked at what did she want. And then it's like, so when you look at what you want to write a book, okay, great. But you want to write a book so it's received and welcomed and people like you and want to read it and think highly of you. She had in her head, if she wrote a book, people were going to humiliate her and shame her and tell her she was wrong, or she'd feel rejected. So we had to reshape that. We call it a representation, and so that she could move in a direction she wanted. This is a lot of the work of the peak performance of athletes. So when an athlete wants to change, like a tennis stroke or a golf stroke, you have to work with muscle memory, but you also have to work with a mindset. So I do a lot with the mindset first, and then helping people then move in the direction they want to go.
Okay, so what's the link, what's the connection between the peak performance, between overcoming fear and being internally motivated by true purpose, the reason why we are here, and what's the purpose of our life? What's the link there, and how can we find out this link? Where can we start, basically?
It's a great question, Thomas. The main thing, and this is one of the things I learned from yoga so many years ago, is that so many of us, especially in our current world, we look to the outside to decide who we are. If you like me, then I feel better about myself. But what yoga says is we all have these seeds of our true nature. Our purpose is already in there. All we have to do is learn to listen to that, cultivate that, and let that grow, so that then I can spread and be who I want to be in the world. But it comes from an internal perspective. It's like living from the inside out, rather than, oh, I'm getting rejected out there, or somebody's telling me I can't do that, so I stop myself on the inside. No, it takes dedication and internal capacity to say, okay, this is what I want. I'm going to do it. Follow that, trust that, and move from that internal source out.
But how can I find out what do I want and what my purpose is?
Well, people say that all the time. And they say, well, I don't know. I said, but you do know.
How?
They say, what is it? What is it you want? And people are like, I don't know. But we do know. Do you want chocolate or do you want vanilla? You know what you want. Do you want to sit in a cubicle or do you want to be out on a beach? How do you know? So once you have sort of like simple little pivot points, then you say, okay, I want this. Okay, what else do you want? What else do you want? And what does that look like? What does that smell like? What do you feel like in your body? And how do you live from that place now? So if somebody says, well, I don't want to sit in a cubicle the rest of my life. Okay, what kind of environment would you want to be in? Open, spacious. Okay, what would that feel like to be in that? What would your colleagues be like? What kind of work? Are you sitting at a computer all day, or are you interacting with people? But your body, your heart, your everything about you is going to say, I want this versus that. But we're so not used to listening to ourselves and letting that guide us forward. But that's the key.